Okay, so let's get started. First of all, my name's Nick Tjaardstra, so I look after digital revenue topics at WAN-IFRA. Really excited to have our two panelists here today, because I think this is a topic that has fascinated me for a while, about why some metros have managed to be successful and some have not, and I'll kind of come back to that as an introduction shortly. So yes, we do have Sophie Gourmelen and Dan Krockmalnic from Boston Globe, and we're going to introduce them properly in a second. But just before we do get started, just a quick heads up on some events that we've got coming up at WAN-IFRA. So next week we've got an interesting webinar with some of our member startups. I mean, they're real small startups. You won't necessarily have heard of many of them. So we've got, for example, United Robots, who do a lot on automated content, robot journalism. We have Axate, who are working on this idea of casual payments. What do you do with people who don't want to subscribe to you? And we have WeLect, who have this crazy idea of on-demand video advertising. So the idea of actually having ads that people want to click on. So, which is an interesting thing when you're trying to deal with a cookieless future. So you can see that on the events website of WAN-IFRA. And then we've been trying to rethink how we do our conferences, of course. We would have loved to have been in Oslo, as we were last year, for the Newsroom Summit hosted by VG, but this time we're going to be online. So that's more aimed at editors who've got this challenge of digital subscriptions while now working from home for the last 6 months. And we're thinking about how that's really going to change things. And actually one big question is, do you need the newsroom at all? And that's actually a big topic in the US, I know as well, where some newsrooms have already gone officially free of the physical newsroom. And then we've got an event in November, which would have been in beautiful Vienna, but is again going to be online. And that's focusing on the marketing side of subscriptions and also on advertising. So a lot of talk about alliances and again, cookies, etc. So do check those ones out. If you're not familiar with this, maybe you've been on a lot of Zoom meetings. With a Zoom webinar, you can post questions in the Q&A, and of course you can also get stuck into the chat as well, but it would be helpful if you can put them in the Q&A, because then also Sophie and Dan can see them. So let's get started. So, the question is, this title, it's slightly, I think I was thinking of Down and Out in London and Paris, I think of a book by George Orwell, but actually we're talking here about the opposite of Down and Out. We're talking about two companies that are doing really well, whereas a lot of others are maybe not doing so well. And from my perspective, and from many of my colleagues' perspective at WAN-IFRA, Boston Globe and Parisien are outliers in a world where, if, for example, in New York, I don't think you can really say that there's a sustainable local news market in New York right now. A lot of the papers that are there that are struggling. We're not, of course, talking about the New York Times, but true local news. The London Evening Standard has had an incredibly difficult time in the past 6 months or so, and is really on the cusp of bigger cuts. And people have always told me that in Berlin and Hamburg, it's almost impossible to make any money at all. And you've seen in the last 6 months again there that big companies like Dumont have effectively sold their flagship titles in Hamburg and Berlin, which suggests that this is actually a really difficult market to crack. But we have two speakers here who can hopefully show how they've bucked that trend. So they're going to introduce themselves. So they're both going to kind of talk for 10 minutes or so to introduce their companies and where they're coming from. And then we'll get into a discussion. So just to quickly tee them up. So we're going to have Sophie Gourmelen, who's Managing Director and Publisher at Le Parisien, and she was previously Head of Sales and Circulation, so very much knows the subscription business, which is obviously one of the big topics that we're going to focus on today. And then we're going to hear from Dan Krockmalnic, who, yes, is general counsel and then responsible for the legal aspects at the Boston Globe, but actually has a much wider ranging role. And we'll also hear he's also involved in a lot of the changes that have been happening in the newsroom recently, and will be involved in some really interesting new projects coming up that he will hopefully be able to talk about briefly. So that's probably enough from me. I'm going to ask Sophie if you would be happy to share your screen and maybe introduce what you've been doing.
I think I need you to leave the screen. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Can you see it?
Yeah, working perfectly. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to participate to the webinar and to present what we've been doing on the digital subscription strategy on Le Parisien. First of all, I must say that we are still in the middle of the road. I mean, we are still building the strategy to increase significantly the digital subscribers. We are not where we want to be, but we are on the road and we are building that. So this is what I'm going to share with you. I don't know if everyone on the webinar know Le Parisien. Le Parisien is a local newspaper dealing with local news on Paris, but not just Paris. We're also dealing with global information. And Le Parisien is used to be and is still a big print newspaper. The circulation of Le Parisien is 300,000 copies per day. And we have at the moment, when I'm speaking, 10% of the copies were digital. So it's still a few percentage, but it's growing very quickly. And I'm going to share with you what we've been doing over the last months to make that happen. So we had a project that we call Le Parisien 200,000 that you can see here on the slide, which started in last June, so it's quite recent, and we've been discussing that with the newsroom and the marketing sales people, and this is really a global project that we have started, including a big reorganization within the newsroom, which I'm going to share with you. Sorry, I'm trying to go to the next slide. Okay. So what is it? We are aiming to reach 200,000 digital subscribers within the 5 years. So it's a long-term goal. And we are willing to gain new audiences. And to do that, we have reviewed the editorial content. And this is what I'm going to share with you. And we are also moving from a print-centered company to a digital-first media company, which means new organization within the newsroom, and which means also new investment in technology and new skills. Just to share with you some numbers, as you can see, local newspaper, which is the slide in the middle, which is called PQR, that you can see, are far behind national newspapers in terms of digital subscribers. Digital subscribers is in yellow. So today in France, 50% of the total circulation is digital within national newspaper like Le Monde or Le Figaro, that probably some of you knows. Local news are far behind. It's below 10%. And Le Parisien aujourd'hui en France is today 30% of our subscription, which are digital. So we are still far from the big newspaper, but slightly better than the local one. This is to show you the big increase that we've had over the last year. So on the digital subscription, we just doubled the numbers. and we are also doubled the revenue. What I mean by this slide is we didn't decrease the price of the digital subscription. In contrary, we increased it. And we managed to do both increase in volume and in value. Okay, I just wanted to share with you some learning on how we did that. We changed the way we manage the paywall. We used to have a method paywall. This is what you can see on this slide. You see in orange, this is the subscription which comes from the method paywall. And we moved to a premium paywall, which means that the articles are completely locked and you can't read the articles if you're not, if you don't subscribe. And the premium subscription are in blue. So you see the big increase on the premium. And when we started that in October last year. We had less than 1% of the people who are reaching paywall pages. And now we're moving to 30%. So we have a much better, we have increased it substantially, the paywall pages due to the premium articles over the last months, as you can see the curve here. And today we have almost 50 articles per day, which are premium. We used to have 10 at the beginning of the year. So this has been a big change in the way we manage the paywall. And this is one of the reasons why we managed to double the subscriptions over the last year. Another learnings, more than 50% of the subscribers are coming from the apps. So the apps are crucial to the subscription success. So this is what you can see in this blue here. And only 30% of the subscription are coming directly from the paywall. So it's the apps, it's the paywall on site, but it's also a lot of subscription communication that we have on the site where people can connect and they can subscribe. We also look at what makes, in terms of editorial contents, what makes people subscribe. And as you can see here, we have the first one is local news. And the blue bar is the number of articles that we are producing every month. And the yellow bar are the subscription. So you see, this tells us that we were doing a lot of local articles. We are producing a lot of local news, but they are not trigger a lot of subscription. That was the same for the sport, which is the one in the middle, where you can see also a high blue bar, but few subscribers coming from sport article. And that was also the same with the one which is just near the sport, which are articles on art and cultural information. So what this analysis tells us is that we had to move from a more selective editorial production on local news, on sport, on art and culture, so that we can have more subscription coming from articles. And today, an article triggers 0.4 subscription. The goal that we have for the future is that one article in average will lead to one subscription. So this tells us that we are going to reduce the publication of articles to be more selective and to publish articles which are more willing to make people to engage and to subscribe. Another zoom on the type of local articles which make them subscribe. And what you can see here in yellow-blue, this is what we call a long reads. So long reads is producing 27% of subscribers. Then a lot of interest on human interest stories, which is the the orange one, all articles which are dealing with crime. I mean, this is something which is very strong in our at Le Parisien, and people are really coming to us to know about that. And then new stories that we've been doing on local mobility, which is the one in gray that you can see here on the slide, and also on real estate, which is the one on the dark blue. So we moved from a small, I would say, local news to more in-depth investigation on local stories, on more information on services. An example, I mean, the local mobility, for example, there is a big things on the bike at the moment in Paris. So now people are running bike all the time. So all that stories are bringing a lot of subscription. So this is a big shift in the way we will ask the newsroom to produce local information. Another thing which has helped us a lot is new dashboard that are existing in the newsroom. I give you here one example. This is a screen. We are following in real time the number of articles that are produced on Premium. We are following the page view on those articles and the conversion. And this is something which is available in the newsroom and is helping the newsroom to put some articles in Premiums and to get some learnings about that. So the key learnings over the last months was what I just said, test and monitor paywall, so method, Premium, probably both. This is what we are experimenting at the moment. We have both method and Premium at the same time. Probably some articles which will be free and can become Premium when we see that they are reaching a huge audience. So this is something that we are testing and monitoring every day. We also have a big focus on the UX and the UI on the site, the need for data, but mainly I think what we've been doing here is the need to transform the editorial contents to make it successful. So what we've been sharing within the newsroom over the last months is a new editorial project which saying fewer articles but better. So we want content which has more digital impact, which provoke more engagement. We are focusing more on long reads, investigation, more opinions also on articles. I mean, more. We are a newspaper which is very objective, very partial in the way we are dealing with information. And we realized that when we had stories with more engagement, more people explaining, more testimony, this is dealing with more subscription. So we are changing at the moment the way we are dealing with the local news. So we had local agencies within Île-de-France. We had nine local agencies. And what we are going to do right now is we keep local agencies, but we are creating central services who are going to deal with investigation, long reads, and they will be centralized in the head office, still dealing with local information, but centralized. We are, I mean, this is what I was saying. I mean, we are going to increase also the agility in the newsroom, in the organization. So we are going to create new teams. This is what I'm just saying, new position that will cover different type of stories. We also are going to restructuring the production so that the workflow will be more synchronized with the digital audiences. And we are going to increase and to bring some new skills within the newsroom on the desk, reinforce visual teams. I mean, we also learned that stories with good visuals, with videos, with podcasts are also giving more engagement than other stories. So we are going to reinforce digital capabilities on video, graphics, and social media experts. Another thing that we've been learning over the last months is to target audiences and to really produce content for small communities. And we're going to experiment mini publishers on one topic. So here you can see the list of the topic we've been selecting. Of course, environment, which is a big one. Buying power, which is very strong at Le Parisien. Every time we are publishing a story which helps people save money, it's making subscription. PSG, sorry, this is the football team, the Paris PSG, and we know there is a strong community on this one. And we've been creating what we call obsessions, and there are, four obsession, and this is area where we think we can make some differences on the digital audiences and subscription. So there will be content on Sentinel, which is we want to make position on topics on feminism, intimacy, food, which is also a very strong topic, Biclou, which is the bicycle, which is becoming huge now in Paris, and everything around science and technology, which appears to be very strong. And I must say on this obsession, what we're going to do here, we're going to designate one journalist on each of these topics, and it won't be a big service. It might just stay in place for 6 months or for 1 year. And if it's working, we might increase it. If it doesn't work, we might stop it. So this is where we can bring more agility in the newsroom. We also create some new digital formats. Of course, newsletter is a big one, and this is a big one to engage the audiences and then to make them subscribe. So we've been creating a lot of different newsletters. We have today around 15 newsletters covering different topics. And we have local newsletter, which is very important. We see that on the subscription pattern. And we also have a podcast, which is Code Source. And we know that podcast has an impact on the retention. So when people are loyal and read and listen to podcast often, they have more chance to stay a loyal subscribers. So we are not very good at the moment at monetizing the podcast on the advertising side, but this is a key asset on the subscription strategy. This is what we believe and what we see in the numbers. And finally, the apps. I've said at the beginning of this presentation that the apps is a key element of the strategy because 50% of the subscribers are coming through the apps. So we've been redoing it completely. It has been relaunched by the end of August, beginning of September. So it's in the apps now we have a lot of articles which are now premium, and we really promote the subscription everywhere. And when we are still at the beginning, so I can't share any numbers with you, but we hope that it will also help a lot on the numbers. And I think that's it. I hope I haven't been too long, Nick.
That's fantastic. I mean, there's so many things happening. And I like that tagline in Le Parisien, 200,000 or 200,000, I guess. I mean, that's a very, I did learn something at school, you know.
Yeah.
But I guess that makes it very clear to your staff what you're trying to aim for. And I think if people were interested in the language, talking about mini publishers and audiences, I mean, some of that comes from our table stakes program, which
Absolutely.
is which Le Parisien has been involved in, and is actually quite well known, I guess, in the US, where hundreds of local publishers have been through it. So it's become kind of a shared language. So we'll share a link to that in the chat if people are curious. I mean, one obvious, I mean, while we're switching over, and maybe Dan can start to share his slides. I mean, I have, one question. I mean, obviously you're making a big change to what your journalists are doing in the newsroom. Does that mean that you're taking people from, I mean, you saw that you were writing maybe too much about sport. I mean, does that mean people who were writing about Tour de France will now be writing about how to buy a bike? Is it that simple, or do you have to, they have
No,
to be
it's
retrained?
not that simple. I mean, it's always difficult to say what to stop doing something. So it has been difficult to tell some journalists that they won't write stories anymore on this. I mean, for example, for us, regional sport, I'm not talking about Le PSG, which is the football team, but regional sport was giving no audiences and no subscription. So we decided to stop it. And that was not an easy one, I would say, because it's a difficult decision. But we prefer to focus our team on long read investigation, which we know have more value for the digital subscriptions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's an ongoing process
and it's an ongoing process.
Yeah. Okay, so Dan, I'll hand over to you.
Great, thanks, Nick, and thanks, Sophie. That was very informative. So, hi guys, thanks for having us from across the pond. I'll just briefly go through where we are digitally and how we are thinking about the immediate future here in Boston. So here are some key subscription metrics of ours. We currently stand at over 220,000 digital-only subscribers, and this has been a huge increase within the past year of almost doubling, and we're up more than 50% since the beginning of the pandemic, and I think that is more than anything else a testament to the real the relevance and the necessity of local news as the kind of the world shuts down, the implications of what it means for all of us and what our lives actually look like. We saw a huge uptick in subscribers. Needless to say, given this growth, we are experiencing faster growth on the digital subscription side than in any other piece of the company. And our revenues are up over 200% since the beginning of 2017, and they continue to be on a very, very good trajectory. This is all, I guess, in part because, but also despite the fact that we have one of the highest digital-only subscription rates in the business, as we understand it, of $1 a day, 99 cents a day. And we have introductory rates, but folks then graduate up to this rate, and we have many subscribers at that full price rate these days. So in terms of our digital subscription reach, yes, we are of course considered a metro paper. We are not one of the national newspapers here in the United States. But we nonetheless do have national reach. We have digital subscribers in all 50 states. More than 1/3 of them are from outside of our state, and that is, I think, growing as well. Though there has been a small regression in that respect. As all the COVID-related news has become so intensely local that the newer subscriber cohorts tend to be more local than the general cohort, but we had been growing on the national scope of our digital subscribers. 54% of all of our page views to our website, globe.com, come from our paying subscribers. As Sophie discussed in terms of the importance of the app, we now have 20% of our subscriber visits are coming from the app, and that too is growing. I think we have some ways to go there, but that is on a good trajectory. In terms of revenue growth, specifically on the digital side, last year we experienced 40% digital revenue growth. We're looking at somewhere close to that for 2021. And that is, again, despite this year being a real blockbuster year. Unfortunately, thanks to the pandemic and the huge subscription bump that we have experienced as a result. Of those folks who became subscribers in March and onwards, largely we believe on account of the pandemic and of the necessity and urgency of the local news. We are seeing them move off of their introductory rates and onto full price subscriptions of $1 a day at a higher than average rate. And again, we think this is a testament to the importance of what we are providing them as schools, as kids, my own included, try and go back to school, as offices think about reopening. And of course, here in the United States, we have a national election that is less than 2 months away now, and we have any number of things that are front and center in the news cycle. And so we've been heartened to see that this huge cohort of new subscribers since the pandemic really set in are sticking with us at fantastic rates. In terms of how we got, we still have a long way to go, but in terms of what we're doing now, what some of our priorities are from a growth and innovation standpoint, I'll talk about a handful of them. One of them is geographic expansion. So our core area is the Metro Boston area. For those of you in Europe tuning into this, Boston is the capital of Massachusetts. We're of course on the East Coast of the United States. Massachusetts is a very small state, and we are the largest city in Boston in New England, and we thought it intuitive that we could expand our core footprint a bit, and our first thought was down to the state immediately to our south, Rhode Island, where it's a very densely populated and quite small state. Its capital is Providence. It's a quick 50 miles or so from Boston, and Rhode Islanders thankfully identify with our pro sports teams here in Boston. We have so much in common. It seemed like a logical move, and so what we did was we opened up a small Rhode Island bureau of 3 reporters some time ago, and we just made the announcement that we're going to be more than doubling that. We've experienced a real uptick in subscriptions in the state of Rhode Island, and we now will have a dedicated Rhode Island editor. We're going to be devoting marketing and online resources to it, and we're going to be equally importantly hiring more reporters down there. And so this is the kind of the first foray of ours from a geographic expansion standpoint, and part of this is unfortunately due to the fact that local news down there has been contracting and not expanding, and so we view that as a fairly intuitive opportunity for us to see if we can gain digital subscribers by meeting them where they are in terms of what is the content that they want to be getting from us, what's the essential news that we can provide. Another key innovation here at the Globe, and by the Globe I mean Boston Globe Media, is Stat News. Stat is a separate website from the Boston Globe, and what it is, it's a digital media company that was founded 5 years ago that focuses on health, medicine, and biosciences. It's a sister company of the Globe. It sits within the Boston Globe media umbrella. We meaning the Globe share an office with them, but it is all one company. And Stat in many ways serves as a laboratory for innovation and for experimentation at Boston Globe Media. By virtue of it being online only, and by virtue of it focusing on discrete areas apart from general news, they have a truly global audience. 30% of Stat's visitors are from outside the United States. But what we get is a good symbiotic relationship between, on the one hand, the Globe, and on the other, Stat, where because we own all the content, we selectively publish stat articles and other content that we think would be of interest to Globe subscribers, both print and digitally. And Stat has proved the concept of being already a self-sustaining business that is largely built on revenue from online subscriptions, and in part on advertising and stat-specific events as well. Nick, I'm presuming, but maybe I shouldn't, that Stat is no stranger to you. As I understand it, Stat has won multiple North American Digital Media Awards, as our editor proudly told me.
We are aware of Stat, yeah.
And we're quite proud of that. And again, for better or worse, but Stat was we've been benefiting greatly from the essential reporting that Stat and only Stat can provide during the pandemic, and it is viewed as a true worldwide authority on reliable information relating to the pandemic. Both the website generally, as well as one particular reporter, Helen Branswell, who has really emerged as a worldwide authority and resource in this space, and we're fortunate to be able to provide that to everybody. Another area of innovation, and this is probably arguably newer, it's certainly not 5 years old like Stat, is what we're calling new media, where hopefully some of you have heard of or seen the movie Spotlight, which came out a handful of years ago. It was a movie about the reporting at the Boston Globe of unearthing the scandal among the Catholic Church of abuse and the systemic worldwide cover-up of it. So needless to say, we got a whole great halo effect from that movie, and we realized that we think that there's a market for us to be expanding our brand presence, and of introducing people who are not subscribers now to the Globe to our offerings of what it is we do, why we do it, and why you should subscribe to us. And so in that vein, we have in the past couple of years rolled out a couple podcasts that were extremely successful here in the States, that reached #1 and #3 nationally on the Apple Podcast charts. One was on an American football player that used to play for the New England Patriots, the local team here, who was accused of murder and then ended up taking his own life. And the other was about the art heist at a Boston museum, which I think to this day remains the largest unsolved art heist in world history, at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. So these were two great podcasts. These were freely available. They were again viewed by us as a way to expand the top of the funnel and introduce folks to our journalism and who we are and what we do. And along those lines, we have a documentary that we have created, that Stat has created, called Augmented, that again tells the story, and it's a Boston story about surgeons, scientists, engineers getting together to create a robotic limb that felt like it actually the patients can feel, that it feels as though it's part of their body. We paid for this, we made it, and we are currently negotiating for the distribution of this story. And so the idea is it's journalism just on a different platform. And it's one that is both good for journalism and in principle good for business. And lastly in this realm is idea of scripted TV series, where I won't get into what the subjects are, but we are in final stage negotiations for a couple scripted drama TV series that are, again, based on our underlying reporting that would be viewable on various streaming applications, which we hope to be able to talk about soon. So that's new media. The last thing I want to talk about is virtual events. And this, of course, is another function of the pandemic, where we had a whole bunch of in-person events with our Globe events team. And of course, when the world functionally shut down, we pivoted to online, and we have experienced great success with a whole host of, no pun intended, virtual events. We've had, since March 24th, we've had over 85 now events. Many of them we've had sponsors for. And by virtue of it being virtual, there's no geographic limitation, right? And so it's a whole lot easier for folks, hopefully, like on this webinar now, to be tuning in and to be hearing from us, from our panelists, and so that has proved the concept from a business case standpoint, and we anticipate doing more of that. So that's a quick overview of a handful of ways in which we are trying to innovate, and on kind of not letting any good crisis go without taking all opportunities that we get.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dan. I think you've opened up so many topics now. So there's a huge field of things that we could get into. One of the things I picked up was that you call John Henry the Red Sox owner. I suppose you could also call him the Boston Globe owner, but I think in the UK we'd call him the Liverpool FC owner. So I guess there's a success across the board there. It's not a bad portfolio. Yeah.
Very prolific.
I mean, it's interesting to see where you're at now, and I think I remember going to your offices back something like 2013 to see Jeff Mariarty at the time, and you were probably at around 10,000 subscriptions. So is this just, what you're seeing now, is that just the fact that you started early paying off, that you've really been at this and now you've found a formula that's working?
Yes and no. I would modify that statement by saying we are constantly experimenting with what the formula is. I think we've had some great success. We're not resting on any success. We're treating this with the urgency that we think it requires. It being the transformation of the company to really be a digital first company, and to get to a point where we are fully sustainable, financially digital only. So we're treating it urgently. We have had great success, a lot better than, as we understand it, a whole host of other major and not so major metros here in the States. But we experiment. We have one of the hardest paywalls in the industry, but we're always experimenting with that. We're seeing, there's a trade-off between the top of the funnel and the bottom, and we're I don't know if we're at a sweet spot, but we're in a good place right now.
No, and also it shows to me there's hope for Sophie with a timeline with saying 5 years. That's kind of the equivalent time that you've really been working at this. Of course, it's really gone into overdrive in the last year, and I think your big success has been to bring up the price point that people are willing to pay. Do you think that's anything special to the kind of people that live in Boston, that they're prepared to pay $1 a day or have to subscribe?
That's a good question. I think, to be honest, I think in part yes. I think the Boston area it's an area that is filled with, I think, as compared with the rest of the country, disproportionately well-educated, oftentimes more well-off people. Our subscription is not cheap. It's expensive, and it's something that we're thinking through now from an equitability standpoint of how do we make sure that we're not shutting folks out, that we think we want to make sure that they have the benefit of our journalism. It's the benefit of a very densely populated metro area, I think. It has a more than critical mass of educational institutions, healthcare and life sciences companies and institutions that are both really world centers in those regards. And so I think that there's a lot that's happening in Boston that it's our job to be reporting that out and to be telling that story. And I think we do that in very effectively, and that is the numbers bear that out.
And Sophie, can you talk a bit about your pricing strategy? I mean, there's also wealthy people in Paris, so I hear. So
yeah, it's a good question. We've been increasing the price of the digital subscription almost every year. And when we started, I would say 18 months ago, the price point was very low because we were around €5 per month. And now we are up to €8, and we're going to move to just below 10 over the next 6 months. And I think it's really, for me, linked to the value of your content. I think if you have good stories, if you have good journalism, you can increase the price. You need to have also a very good UX, I think, on the website. Everything needs to work perfectly. We couldn't offer that previously because we were on the very old technology platform, and we moved to Arc a year ago, and now everything is going well. We don't have crash anymore. So that's helped us also increase the price. I think it's a combination of course, strong, good quality journalism and good services, and the UX needs to be 100% perfect. And I think if you have these two, you can increase the price. We're also working on multiple offers. At the moment, we are working on family offers where you can get more than just one access. You can get up to 4 access, and you increase the price, you pay a bit more, exactly in the same way that Netflix or Spotify is doing. So that's the type of things we are doing at the moment.
That's interesting. So it's the same sort of journey. Okay, so you talked, Sophie, about the changes in the newsroom, and of course, so that's, I think, similar in Boston, where there's a different union for the journalists and for the editors, and then there is, maybe for some of the executive staff. I mean, how do you avoid having this old school church and state mentality that maybe they used to have at the New York Times when you have separate escalators? I mean, I noticed myself there's less security when you go up the marketing escalator than up the lift than there is when you go to the editorial floors. I mean, how do you manage that? I mean, maybe Sophie first. And I mean, you've now got these major changes happening. You're trying to get people to work in a different way. I mean, how do you bring people on board with that?
This is not an easy one. In fact, we are, I mean, we're spending a lot of time with the reporters, explaining where we want to go, explaining what it means to be more a digital company than just print-oriented company. And more important, I think it's about explaining to each journalist what is going to change for him or for her. Because when you're dealing with this kind of changes, I think what is important is to explain what is going to change in their day-to-day job. So we're spending quite a lot of time on that. And of course, we're doing some training and stuff like that. But we're also having some change agent within the newsroom, because it cannot just be one person who is dealing with that change. So we have some reference people in the newsroom who are helping that. And then it's also about, I think, I mean, I dare to say that, about bringing some new skills. I mean, you cannot change people completely. So if you want to be more digital, you need to bring some people who know how to make a video quickly, how to do some motion design, I mean, this is inevitable. You cannot force, someone to do that. So you need to deal with that. You need to bring some new skills, and you need to let some other people leave the newsroom. That's something which had to happen. So it's a long-term transformation. It's not happening in one day, and it's taking a lot of time. But it's a mixture of training, change culture within newsroom, and bringing new skills, and let some people leave the company.
Absolutely. Has that been similar for you, Dan? Or?
Yeah, I think, yes. We're all in this together in multiple ways. We're all in this together in terms of there's a worldwide pandemic, first and foremost, that's kind of taking place, and all of our employees, whether or not they are in a union, and we have 10 different unions, not just our guild, because we print our own newspaper, we distribute our own newspaper. So whether they're in a union or not, we are all colleagues, and I think this pandemic, again, for better, has reminded us of that fact, and so while we all work from home, or all of those of us who can work from home, we still have an essential core staff who print and distribute our newspaper every day on site at our publication facility. We're trying to stay together, and we do this by way of company-wide town halls every several weeks on Zoom, which we never had done in person, or we hadn't done in the past several years. And so I think in many ways, the pandemic has helped us come together as a company, learn about what different pockets of the company are doing in new and interesting ways, not just to cope with COVID, but really to, again, adapt and thrive despite COVID. And I think that there's a irreducibly human element to all of that. And so yes, we wearing the hat that I do as general counsel, I sit on one side of the bargaining table currently, with 4 different unions on the other side. But we don't lose sight for a moment that these guys, we're all colleagues together, that we're just trying to get through life right now together, and that we are trying all together to help innovate and change this company to allow us to thrive.
That's a really good answer. I think things have really changed in that relationship over the last 6-7 months. So I want to ask a question from the audience, and we have Elena Sund had a question about how you approach conversion versus retention. So we're going into a slightly different space, and maybe starting with you, Dan, because we were talking just before we started about what is a podcast. So I think Sophie said that for them, podcast is kind of part of the paid offer, perhaps, whereas for you, podcast is part of the conversion funnel, and these new video initiatives will all be part of that top part of the funnel to get new people into your titles.
Yes. So the answer is a couple prongs to it. Yes, but. So yes, top of the funnel in terms of exposing new and different non-subscribers to who we are and what we do and why they should arguably be subscribing to us. And in particular, the podcast that was titled Gladiator, which was about the New England Patriots football player, was wildly successful among folks who were not subscribers. And I personally, among my friends who shamefully were not subscribers, I heard them say what a fascinating podcast this was. And there was an accompanied 6-part spotlight actual reported series on this the same football player that we had released concurrent with the 6-part podcast, and we gained thousands, I don't think I could say or should say, we gained thousands and thousands of new subscribers as a result of that. And so it was the smart combination in the newsroom of, on the one hand, having that top of the funnel, but on the other hand, having something to direct them to behind the paywall that all of a sudden they felt a need to read. That said, as we do think about expanding our new media efforts, one of the North Stars that we will be being guided by will be this idea that we do want to direct folks back to our website. We don't want this to just be a brand enhancement play, right? We want them to have a reason to come to Boston Globe or globe.com, right? And to see this and then say, oh wow, look at all this other stuff here too. And to have things that do sit behind the paywall, that are exclusive to subscribers, be it behind the scenes interviews or extra episodes of one way or another. So we're still thinking through this, but we don't view it as only a top of the funnel exercise.
And Sophie, I mean, do you have is there a separate retention team that you have, that, or is it all one responsibility?
Yes, we have in the circulation team, they are separated. So we have people who are dealing with the conversion, and we have a team dealing with retention. They are developing a lot of CRM strategy, and we also dealing with, we have a subscriber club that we're using, and we are giving some, we're dealing with some events for subscribers only, some partnerships, and it's something which we are promoting, but we have, this is not something we are doing very well at the moment, and that's something where we're going to focus a bit more. We've been focusing a lot on acquiring new subscription, as you can see, and reinforce the retention. We know it's very important. Like you, Dan, we had a lot of new subscribers during the pandemic, and surprisingly, they stay with us, which is a good news. They stay because of the content, but I think we can do much better if we are providing more services. The podcast is a good retention product, and we are going to develop that even more. Also, video series, they're helping retention subscribers, and it's something we are doing more often. We have one video series on food checking. We have one on cycling, I just mentioned it. And that's something we know is retaining the subscribers. But we need to do more.
Okay, I can see we've got other questions coming in, but we did promise to finish this within 1 hour for your schedules, and a lot of questions from Valerie. Hopefully some of them we did answer, but you do know Valerie very well, so I'm sure she can always follow up. And there was a question from Greg Pichota, who works with us in Asia and also works with other organizations. But he was asking why it is that the local news was converting less, but I think that wasn't exactly what you were saying. It's just the type of local news. Actually, the investigative local news was converting very well. So I think that's just a bit of a nuance in what you were saying. But I think the best discussions always leave me wanting to ask so many more questions, and so many, just for example, about the events business at the Boston Globe, and for us, we also run events as WAN-IFRA, so of course lots of fascinating topics that I think also people would want to ask more about. So thank you very much to you both. I think maybe you guys should have a conversation about how you work with the unions and with the editorial departments, etc. That's probably an interesting discussion. And I think it's really exciting to see how the Boston Globe has managed to expand and keep a very strong revenue base, and that you're both profitable metros, which is definitely not a given, and definitely not a given in a year like 2020. And that's before we even get into the topic of advertising, which we probably need a completely separate webinar all about, but we've wisely stayed clear of that one today. So thanks again.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hopefully talk soon. Okay. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.